This is everything you need to know about the Adidas X crazyfast 0.1. When it comes to fit, the crazyfast definitely fits true to size. Although this model is a bit more wider fitting, I would still say that this boot is more for narrow-footed people. But there is a bit of room in the toe box, and I do believe because of the elevated toe area, that is why. And as far as heel slippage and rollover goes, it's pretty much non-existent in these boots, for me at least. And because of the overall construction of the boot, your stability wings, your aero cage, your opacity upper, and your primary tongue area, the boot provides a very good amount of lockdown. Now, although the stability wings on the heel of the boot provide lockdown in the heel area, they do cause a bit of concern when it comes to comfort, but nothing too crazy. So if you're wearing the boots for maybe more than 2 hours, I'd say you start getting this kind of pinching sensation in the heel area, the outer heel. And I feel maybe if I wore my boots a bit longer that a blister would start to form. But you know, after a full 90 minutes with a warm up, I didn't have any blisters in my foot, but it was quite sore in that area. In terms of the midfoot, I didn't really have any issues. You get this like good sense of lockdown because of the aero cage inside the boot, and yeah, it was relatively comfortable. I have no issues there. And if I was to give you a break-in time, I'd say maybe you need about 2 to 3 sessions to fully break these boots in, so nothing too bad. Now the tongue area is comfortable in my opinion, but it's a little bit on the tighter side, but again, nothing too crazy and maybe just down to my foot type. But yeah, comfort on these was quite decent in this area. And like I mentioned before, the toe box, there is a bit elevated. For some people, they don't like that. Me, I don't necessarily mind that. It's supposed to, like, you know, be reminiscent of a sprinter shoe or track and field shoe. I don't know what you want to call it. And in terms of the toe box comfort, I didn't have any issues there whatsoever. I think maybe the extra space actually doesn't, you know, provide you with maybe necessarily a responsive kind of feel for the boot, but in terms of comfort, it delivers in that area. And just throughout the boot, it's not very cushioned. The only cushioning you get is in the heel area, and in terms of comfort and cushioning there, I have no issues. Again, quite comfortable. Now when I say tooling, I'm talking about the outsole and the sole plate. When it comes to maneuverability, you're not going to really have any issues with these boots. I always felt free and mobile while I'm running around. Ability wise as well, the boot performed very well, especially when you're making sharp changes in direction. I didn't feel I was going to lose my balance at any point. Now, because of the boot's overall construction and the amount of lockdown that the boot provides, the responsiveness for the boot actually is also very good, as you would expect from a speed boot. Traction wise, this is probably the boot's strong point. So you can see on the outsole you have these chevron shaped studs which are there to help provide more traction, as well as the elevated toe box that provide that extra push off as well. Although that the boot is not necessarily as comfortable, maybe say a more leather-like or more padded boot, the amount of stud pressure you get with the chevron shaped studs is quite minimal. As you can see, then even the shape of the chevron studs, there is a bit of curvature to relieve some pressure. And with feedback, the previous generation of the X used a Carbotex insole. That's not here in this boot. In this boot, they use a TPU insert. And in terms of feedback, I'd still say it's not as, maybe the feedback's not as good as you would get with carbon fiber, but in this case, it's still a very good and still a very, I don't know, feedbacky, if you want to use the term. Provides a good amount of feedback as well still. Now when I say feel for the ball, I'm pretty much talking about the performance of the upper and its interaction with the ball. So when you're passing, shooting, dribbling, etc. Now like I said before, the upper is made from what Adidas call aeropacity, which is a very thin synthetic upper, to the point it's actually translucent. Now in terms of barefoot feel, you definitely do feel a barefoot feel with these boots, but it's not like a kind of typical kind of barefoot feel where you sometimes have more aggressive kind of traction or kind of grip elements on the upper, but with this one it's more of a kind of like a plasticky one, which is not to everyone's taste, but for me I think it's still fine. I still think it provides a good amount of barefoot feel that you would expect of a lightweight speed boot. And when it comes to grip, although the upper doesn't have any like grip elements on it, it still has this kind of micro texturing to provide a good amount of grip. And in that sense, I think the crazyfast still performs very well. So when you're making contact with the ball or making like close control dribbles or anything of that ilk, you still get a good amount of grip on the ball. You feel completely in control at all times. And because of how thin the upper is, there's absolutely no way you're going to get a cushion touch on the ball. Like I said, it's to the point that the upper is translucent, so any kind of cushion touch, you're not going to get it on this boot whatsoever. And then another area where you could say the upper is somewhat lacking is responsiveness. It's not to the detriment of the performance of the boot in any way, shape or form, in my opinion. And that all has to do with the kind of extra space in the toe box area. I'm not necessarily fussy, but because of that extra space in the toe box area, it takes away a bit of responsiveness. Personally, my preference in terms of when it comes to speed boots is just like, you know, there's absolutely no room in the toe box area. I want the upper to feel like a second layer of skin almost, and to the point of the Adidas crazyfast, you're not going to get that. Again, that's down to personal preference. Some people don't mind it in speed boots, some people do, but me, I'm generally not too fussy usually, but when it comes to speed boots, I'd rather have the upper feel like it is a second layer of skin. Now for my overall thoughts about the Adidas X Crazyfast 0.1 laced. With this boot, you're going to get your standard run-of-the-mill speed boot. That's probably the best way I can actually explain this boot. Lightweight, provides good lockdown, good responsiveness, and a decent amount of barefoot feel on the ball. Now from what I've heard, I didn't get to use the actual speed portal, but based on what I've heard from other reviewers, this boot is actually a slight improvement on the previous model. And just based on my experience with speed boots in the past, I wouldn't say this is maybe a top tier speed boot when you're comparing it to maybe the Mercurial or previous generations, or even Adidas X or previous generations as well. But despite it being an improvement on the speed portal, for me, it's still no better than the Adidas X Speed Flow. But despite all of that, I still think it's actually a viable and a good option, and it's enjoyable to play in. So if you're thinking about it, I'd still go for it, and you can make up your own opinion, but for me, I still think it's a good boot despite all the stuff I've said. So overall, it does get the Substance seal of approval.